Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
And welcome back to the Last Round Boxing Podcast, the first one of 2025, and the first one we've done in quite a while, almost probably a month and a half, 2 months. So we apologize for the delay, but we're starting this year in 2025 with another special guest with some big news that happened over the holidays in regards to a very, very legendary and a staple in the sport of boxing in terms of reporting and journalism and information. The Ring magazine that's been around, I believe, since the 1920s or 30s.
Yes, sir. 102 years.
Exactly.
And counting.
And counting. Let's get to 200, right? Doug Fischer, the editor-in-chief of Ring magazine, who's been on the show obviously multiple times in the past. We're always grateful to that. But as I mentioned, Dougie Fischer returns to the Last Round Boxing Podcast. Thank you for joining me, Dougie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a while. It's been like more than a year, right? It's been a few years, couple years.
I hope it hasn't been a couple years. Maybe more than a year.
It has been.
Man.
Maybe. I'm sure I was on like during the pandemic. You know what I mean? But
yeah, you were for sure.
Have I been on since like 2021? I probably have.
I think you have, but I think you might be. You know what? I don't. It might be more. It might be a couple years. I think you're right. I thought it was at least more than a year. No, it's not your fault. We get this rotation of guests, and we kind of get caught up. But you're back now, and at the beginning of your first guest in 2025. So how much better could that get, right?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me. Thank you for being persistent.
Oh, no problem.
You know, I get on people's nerves sometimes because I'm not easy to get a hold of by phone. You know, if you call, maybe if you text. Not always, but and when it comes to like podcasts and stuff like that, it's just I try to go on when I really have like the time, because I don't like to be rushed. I don't do really well with like really short interviews because I'm long-winded.
Right.
So it's like, well, I want to give myself time, and then sometimes I'm just looking at my schedule like I have no time. You know,
right.
Or like the time I have, I know, like at my house, because I work from home. Look at this plate. Like, here we go.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
I just knocked something over. I don't even know what I knocked over. Probably just a bunch of pins or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you can actually see from my perspective, my desk, it's a mess. But I'm like, I work at home, so like sometimes like I'll have a couple hours, but it's like everybody else is at home. My wife, girls, and I can tell them, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. And they'll say, okay, all right, don't worry. But they always come in. They'll distract. And it's just like,
yeah.
So then, I'm like, I don't have time. I tell people this, like, or I kind of put it off. I put it on the back burner or whatever. So you kind of have to be persistent to like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it on this day or whatever. But
yeah.
My wife and my oldest daughter just left to see a movie, and my younger daughter is kind of like me. She's a bit of an introvert, so she's in her room, and I know she's going to stay in her room. And she's really quiet, too. If she does come in here, she'll be, like, really quiet. Yeah. The others, not so much, you know.
Yeah.
And my dog's in here, too, but he's sleeping, so.
Yeah, he's quiet, so.
Yes.
No, I get you.
Yeah, for right now. Yeah.
So, obviously jumping on the big topic of this show, Dougie, is the Ring magazine was just recently sold. But I kind of want to rewind in the history.
As of November. As of
November, right?
New owner. It was Oscar De La Hoya since 2007.
Right.
So,
and who was it before then?
Before then, it was a publishing company called Kappa Publishing. And
were you there at that time?
Oh no! This is when Nigel Collins was editor in chief.
Okay.
It was Kappa. Nigel has two editor in chief reigns that was separated by Steve Farhood. When it was, I think Nigel came on after Bert Sugar and whatever finance, group that was financing him left. I was like the mid 80s or whatever. And then towards the end of the 80s, it was Stanley Weston, who had published a number of boxing magazines, most notably KO magazine. I mean, he had published boxing magazines going back to like the 50s. And he always kind of saw himself as a rival to Nat Fleischer, the founder and publisher of Ring Magazine, because when Stanley Weston was a kid and a teenager, he worked for the Ring. And he was brilliant. He was a great photographer. When he got older, he became an excellent photographer, and he was a contributor for Ring Magazine. But he started out doing he was like an office assistant, and he was a really good artist. So some of those like classic those illustrated classic Ring Magazine covers from like going way back, like the 30s and stuff. Stanley Weston, 30s and 40s, Stanley Weston was that artist and all, but I think he became a rival of Nat Fleischer's, and he always wanted to own the magazine. It wasn't going to happen while Fleischer was alive. Fleischer passed away in 1972, and his son or his son-in-law, it basically inherited, kind of took over the magazine, but Weston was always around, and he owned other boxing magazines. And in 1980, 79 or 80, he started KO magazine. And by like the middle of the decade, certainly towards the end of the 80s, KO was like right there. Yeah. Like in terms of sales, but also just in terms of its credibility and its popularity within the industry and among fans. And I can tell you, as a teenager during those years, I think I favored KO magazine over the Ring. The Ring was kind of stuffy. And KO magazine came with the posters, had like a centerfold basically, but it's a boxer. And you take it out, you rip it out of the magazine, and it's the boxer on one side, and on the back, it's the boxers, usually champions, it's their record and some career stats and maybe a little bio or something like that. But that was a lot of fun, and they took more poetic license. They were a little more irreverent, They had a little more fun with their articles, but they had serious articles. They would always have a Q&A that was really in depth. And if you were a hardcore fan, it was like, finally, I've always wanted to read interviews like this with these athletes that I follow. And you weren't going to get that in like the newspapers. So KO was real special. So anyways, I think in 88 or 89, Stanley Weston bought Ring Magazine. And so Ring Magazine and KO Magazine became sister publications. And Steve Farhood was the editor-in-chief of KO Magazine, and Weston made Farhood editor-in-chief of the Ring, and made Nigel Collins like managing editor or something like that. And then when Farhood left, then Collins became once again editor-in-chief. But I think, I could be wrong about this, I think it went from Stanley Weston, and his company was called London Publishing. And under the umbrella of London Publishing, there was Ring Magazine and there was KO Magazine. Those were the big two, but then they also had something called World Boxing and also a publication just called Boxing, and then whatever year it was. So if it was 1990, it was Boxing 1990. And a lot of stuff. And if you were a geek like me, you bought them all. Plus the other boxing magazines that were owned by other companies like Boxing Illustrated. That was where Bert Sugar went to. There was others, but I had to have them all. And after London Publishing, I think was Kappa Publishing, and it was Kappa Publishing that sold to Oscar De La Hoya in 2007. And Kappa also they published some pro wrestling magazines as well. Mm-hmm. And I think they might still. I don't know if you're familiar with Pro Wrestling Illustrated, PWI.
I think they've been around a while.
It's been around a long time. Yeah, I think they still have that. but their bread and butter, the Ring wasn't making them any money. But the guy who owned Capital Publishing was a big boxing fan and like a big collector. Like he had like tons of memorabilia. So he wanted to own the Ring kind of for the archive.
Yeah.
And anything worth like keeping from that archive, you know, like physical material, like, you know, the bell that was used, you know, and, you know, for, I don't know, Jack Johnson versus Jeffries, you know what I mean? Like he wanted to have that stuff for his private collection, but their bread and butter was those crossword puzzle publications that like senior citizens buy because it's supposed to like keep their mind sharp and all. Yeah. That's I think that's still their bread and butter, as a matter of fact. But so there hasn't really been that many owners of the Ring. Let me think. There's Nat Fleischer, his son. I forget the guy's name. His name was Nat as well, but it's like Lubet, you know, was his last name. And then I think it was Bert Sugar and whoever was Bert had like a
financing team
behind him. Yeah, exactly. But you know, he's the face, right? He's the fedora and the cigar and the glass of bourbon or whatever. And then I think it was Stanley Weston, and maybe there was between Sugar's group and Weston, there might have been another group in between there, but they didn't last very long. I seem to remember that, like in like another group, and there was an NBA player, like a former NBA player that was part of that group. I can't remember. I got to go and but
it's
whatever.
Like it's like Magic Johnson being a part of the Los Angeles Dodgers owners.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been many. You know, but that's my point. There has not been many owners of the Ring. You know, you can count them on your fingers. You know what I mean? But His Excellency Turki Alalshikh is the latest owner of Ring Magazine.
When did you start?
It's new, you know, just like I'm sure it was. I wasn't with the Ring when Oscar bought it in 2007, but I think there was a lot of excitement and anticipation with that. At least there was like a couple of years of a honeymoon before things started getting kind of dicey or whatever.
When did you join the Ring?
I joined at the end of 2008. So my first full year, I think it was like November of 2008. And my first full year was 2009. So I remember the first fight I covered for the Ring as co-editor of ringtv.com. And it wasn't even ringtv.com at the time. I think it was like ringonline.com. It was Paul Williams' fight. It was in Ontario, as a matter of fact. It was Paul Williams. It was a junior middleweight fight. Damn, I'm forgetting the name of this dude. He was a seasoned veteran, a legit contender at junior middleweight. And Paul had a tough time. I remember that night because he got cut, and maybe he finally overwhelmed the dude and got the knockout. But it was a fight. And then not long after that, I think in early December, was the Oscar De La Hoya Manny Pacquiao fight. So that was the first big event that I covered for the Ring, but just the website. I didn't have a lot to do with the magazine in those first years. The magazine, it was that was still Nigel Collins and Eric Raskin and William Detloff and Joe Santoliquito. I think that was like the core staff, and they handled the website, and it was Michael Rosenthal and I that we were taking care of the website. So
you became editor.
Yeah.
You became the editor-in-chief when?
I didn't become editor-in-chief until the end of 2017.
Okay.
That was a long time. Yeah. At some point, Nigel and company were shoved out, not in a cool way. That was like I'm pretty sure that was a Richard Schaefer action. And that I want to say that was like either at the end of 2011 or sometime in 2012. And then Rosenthal became the editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine. And then I had more of a role with Ring after that. Like I was maybe like, I don't remember what my title was. I think it was like assistant editor, and then maybe associate editor. And I would always write like, an article here and there, and, but I was there to like, just kind of help Michael sort of brainstorm on like, what to write about, but I do recall those were stressful years, because those first years was when Schaefer was still the CEO of Golden Boy Promotions, and Schaefer was never into Oscar buying the ring. That was something Oscar wanted. Schaefer's a bank, he's a banker, former banker. He's a finance guy. He was like bottom line, and he was like, magazines don't make money. We're in the 2000s. Like, that's crazy. They weren't making money in the 90s. We're not like, what do we, and so he never knew kind of what to do with it, other as sort of like, okay, if we have to have this responsibility of publishing this magazine, then, it's going to be like a marketing tool. And he didn't really care about the rankings or anything like that, or even, I don't even think Schaefer really cared that much for the Ring Magazine belts, but he was way into the pound for pound. And I know he used to lean on us, especially Michael, because I'd laugh. I have a certain way with these dudes. I'll just laugh in their face. I won't even argue with them. And I could tell right away that Schaefer knew that he could lean on Michael in ways that Michael would kind of either acquiesce or, not fight him on. But Michael was standing his ground. You know what I mean? He just didn't like doing it. But I know it was Schaefer. Schaefer brought in a dude, a former judge, Chuck Giampa, is like the chairman of the ratings committee. And basically Giampa's job was like, I'm in charge of the pound for pound, like, oh, really? And guess what? Adrian Broner is pound for pound, Oh, okay. All right. Honestly, I didn't really fight them that much on that. I just said, I don't agree. No, he's not. And you guys aren't doing him any favors, giving him this status before he's actually earned it. It's just going to go to his head, and he's already a bit of a head case, but whatever, But I remember Michael and I, like, we had our own pound for pound, and we're like, no, this is not our pound for pound. That's the ratings chairman, or whatever. So
when Richard Schaefer,
there's some weird years there, and also a lot of it, I don't want to put it all on Schaefer, because I know at that time Al Heyman was a manager advisor, but he was the manager advisor to like 80% of the top talent that Golden Boy promoted. So obviously he had a lot of influence with that company. And, primarily he was the advisor for one Floyd Mayweather Jr. And Floyd, even though he said, he was his own promoter, he didn't really have a promoter's license, and they weren't really doing at that time. I'm saying going back to like, whatever, 2008, 2009. It's like, it was actually 2008. He sat it out. But when he came back in 2009, first guy he fought
Marquez.
Fighter was Juan Manuel Marquez. That's right.
Yeah.
And they did business. They did well. And so, let's say Floyd would employ Golden Boy Promotions to be the promoter, the organizer for all his big fights in Las Vegas. And that was big money, and that kept Golden Boy Promotions in good standing with HBO, just like when Oscar De La Hoya was active. The fact that Oscar De La Hoya was the pound for pound, not the pound for pound, the pay-per-view king, the big revenue king in boxing, that gave Golden Boy a lot of influence with HBO, which cut the biggest check in world boxing, definitely on the U.S. scene. But being involved with Floyd Mayweather, that was just passing the torch. He was pound for pound number one, and he was fastly becoming a pay-per-view monster. And so that kept Golden Boy in good standing with HBO. And then at some point they switched over to Showtime, and that kept them in good standing with Showtime. Schaefer wanted to keep Al Heyman happy, and that meant keeping Al Heyman's fighters happy, from Floyd Mayweather to Adrian Broner to Danny Garcia, because Danny's a cool guy, but Danny's dad, like we would have Triple G on the cover, and believe me, Angel Garcia would call up and bitch to Schaefer about that, or we'd have another Golden Boy fighter on there, Lucas Matisse, like before they fought, and Danny's dad would be like, what the hell is this and all that, and there's pressure, so Schaefer would just pass that right on to poor Michael, but thankfully, like, they were gone. Like, there was the big split, with Schaefer and Al Heyman and all of that. That was like the start of 2015, and so by the time that I stepped in as editor-in-chief, I didn't have to deal with that stuff. I kind of had it easy, but it wasn't easy. There was still the conflicts of interest, you know what I mean? Because, Canelo became the flagship fighter for Golden Boy Promotions. And of course, the shit hit the fan when he tested positive for clenbuterol. Was at the start of, was that 2018?
I think so.
At the start, early. I remember it was early in the year, because they were aiming to have that rematch, Golovkin versus Canelo, in May of that year, and it wound up, because of the Nevada State Athletic Commission suspension, it wound up being postponed, being pushed to September of that year. But anyways, lots of controversy, lots of pushback. And that's probably the only time during my tenure as editor-in-chief where, like, I'm on the phone with Eric Gomez and I'm arguing, like, hey, we're going to have, this is before he was suspended. I'm like, hey, we're going to have to, just letting you know, we're going to have to drop him from the rankings and strip him of the ranked title if the commission, winds up suspending him. Mm-hmm. And Eric's like, what? He's cooperating. It's like you can't punish him for this. That's like punishing a fighter for food poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's different. He doesn't have what is it, salmonella? It's not like he's got a tummy ache here. This is different, and it's not, like, it's up to the governing body. The commission that. And I remember Eric saying, like, if this fight was taking place in Texas, it wouldn't have, no problem. If it was taking place in New York, no problem, whatever, and maybe he was talking about the levels of the clenbuterol or the results of the subsequent testing or the hair test or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but you guys wanted this fight at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So it's the Nevada State Athletic Commission that is overseeing it. They are the governing body for this. And, they have certain rules, and they did. And they like put out some kind of report basically absolving Canelo of any wrongdoing, but they were just saying, hey, it's in our books. There's strict liability here. The athlete is responsible for whatever's in the system, but thank you, Canelo. You didn't lawyer up, you didn't fight us. You cooperated, but I remember that being a very stressful period, because Canelo's polarizing. There's people who love him and there's a lot of people who hate him. Especially at that time, because they felt he should have lost the first fight to Golovkin. So you had the Golovkin diehards that were just like fanatical. They were fanatical Canelo haters, And I love Golovkin. You know what I mean? He was one of my favorite fighters. I'm very good friends with his promoter, Tom Loeffler. I picked him to win both fights, but I also respected Canelo. You know what I mean? Like I recognize it takes two tremendous fighters to produce those fights that they gave us, especially the rematch. The rematch was tremendous. I was like, this is boxing gets. Like that was some Mike McCallum, James Toney shit. The level craft, just two great middleweights, two future Hall of Famers in there. One of them older, like Mike McCallum was 35 when he fought James Toney, and I believe Triple G was the same age when he fought Canelo. But you just saw so much it wasn't just the heavy-handedness and the willingness to engage. It was a lot of technique, a lot of ring generalship, really good defense in close, just with the blocking and turning, they weren't just jumping around to avoid punches. It was brilliant stuff. But I respected both of them, still do. But I remember that being like a really tough time because people were like, all right, Ring Magazine, you better kick him right out of that magazine, but we had to go back and forth with Golden Boy, with the owners of the magazine for a number of weeks, maybe about a month, and to everybody's credit, somebody acquiesced, you know what I mean? We got a phone call from Stephen Friedman, who was sort of like the acting publisher at the time, but he was really like a PR guy for Golden Boy.
Yeah.
We were kind of going through him, and kind of this whole back and forth, and he said, you know what, go ahead, strip him, drop him, My guess is Canelo said, I don't give a fuck, I'll be unrated by the ring, and I won't carry that title in the ring with me in this rematch, but if I win, I'm getting it all back, it's just because by that time he had served his suspension or whatever. So then he's eligible to get back in the rankings and all that, so.
Yeah, it must be, I'm sure you're not the only one to go through situations like that in the reporter and journalistic world.
Absolutely, man. Especially now these days. Cause all mainstream media is corporate owned. They're all owned by these big conglomerates and whatnot, or they're owned by, these owners who, want to impose their sensibilities, their point of view, their philosophy, onto the paper.
Absolutely.
It is what it is. It's, but I remember a lot of people got on my ass and I'm like, hey, we're fighting them on this. Do you fight your boss? You go in there and risk your job. I did this. I was saltier back then. I was a little sassier online.
Yeah.
I don't give a hell. I'm entering my mid 50s, so I don't, pardon my French, I don't give a fuck. Say what you want, think what you want. I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do, man. You know what I mean? And that's a blessing, and I can be happy with that. But dial it back to 2018, I would go head to head. I was still doing the mailbag, and I would go head to head people in that forum, and but also on social media. Somebody came at me with an attitude, or if they were asking questions in like a real nasty way, I'd put it right back on them. I'm like, don't question my authority. Don't question my integrity. You can question my authority. That's fine. Don't question my integrity, because I don't think, I don't know about your integrity. You know what I mean? And listen, it's not easy battling City Hall. Do you do it? It's not easy going up against the boss. Most people don't. They'll get on social media and bitch and complain, anonymously or whatever. But most people don't actually go in there and say, I demand this, I demand that, and take that risk or whatever. And I know this. It's human nature. I'm not even dissing people who don't do that. I get it. Most of us cannot afford to lose our job. You lose your paycheck a couple months later. If you don't have another job, you might be out on the street. That's a situation for a lot of Americans. I'm not even criticizing those. I'm criticizing the folks that go out there and say, oh, you should do this, or I would do that. Or I'm like, would you now? I know you wouldn't. Most of you wouldn't, and people hate that, by the way. It's right. I know it. It's the same thing with people talking hard. I'm like, I don't know you, dude. You're probably on the other side of the world. But I know this is for a fact. Most people can't fight. You're talking you're going to kick my ass next time you see me. I'm going to just assume you can't fucking fight and you've never fought. I know you're a hardcore fight fan. I know this, but I'm not putting people down if you don't know how to fight or you don't get into fights or you've never trained in boxing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I know most people can't fight and most people haven't boxed. Mm-hmm. And there's a large number of people out there talking hard and talking shit on X, formerly Twitter, And I'm like, and back then I used to be like, yeah, okay, well, are you in Southern California? I'll meet you at your gym or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't say bring it on, by the way. They get real fucked up and nasty. And I'm like, all right, but I know that it pisses them off.
Yeah.
And I just say that because I know it's a fact. Most people can't fight, and most people really don't want to fight. We just carry all this aggression and angst and antagonism around, and social media is a great place to just spit it out and attack people or whatever. And there was a time I would clap back, like former owner of the Ring magazine, Oscar De La Hoya, clap back. And I'm saying right now, I have no need to clap back. I don't.
Yeah, you're past that time, huh?
I'm past it. Honestly, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
I'm too busy doing this job, which is what I want to do, So shout out to Oscar because he kept the magazine alive and kept it in print up to and through its 100th year, 2022. And shout out to His Excellency Turki Alalshikh for buying it and putting it back on the shelves, putting it back in print. It's not back on the shelves yet, but it will be. We're working on it.
Now, were you told, or did you? I mean, I don't want to, consulted or kind of told about like, hey, there's a potential sale here. It's coming down the pipe.
Yep. Right after Boachuk Ortiz, and I was in Vegas for that because I knew it'd be a banger.
Right.
Watch both guys from like prospects all the way through contender status to where they are now. And I knew that was going to be an awesome fight. So I definitely wanted to be there. I was there. And the next day, Sunday, I'm at the Vegas airport and about like 20 minutes away from boarding my plane. And I get a call from a Golden Boy exec, cool dude named Marco. And he's like, hey, are you still in Vegas? I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm about to step on my plane. Why do you ask? He's like, well, His Excellency asked about you. And I'm like, oh, really? It's like, yeah, have you met him? I'm like, this dude's surrounded by people. Like, no, I saw him. I saw him at the Mandalay Bay last night. I saw Beto Duran interview him on DAZN, but no, I didn't get a chance to say what's up. It's like he's mobbed by people. I'm like, right. And he said, well, he wants to meet with you, and I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, and he told me keep my schedule open because maybe he'll be in LA and you guys can get together here at the Golden Boy headquarters. I'm like, I'll be there wherever you want me to show up. I'll be there. Just let me know. I didn't hear anything Monday, and then Tuesday morning I got an early call, and he's like, Doug, can you meet today? I'm like, yeah. Where do I go? Las Vegas. Like, he's still in Vegas. Like, yeah, he's still in Vegas. I'm like, all right, what am I supposed to do? I was like, don't worry, his people will handle it. Hung up. And then like half an hour later, like I get a phone call, and it's like a number, like a foreign number, you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, okay, this must be that, and it's like, your flight leaves at 2 p.m. and your car will be there at 12:30 or something like that. And I'm like, really? Oh shit. Okay. All right. Let me throw my shit together or whatever. And, I was on a plane. They took me to the Wynn. I had just enough time to, check in and, not even unpack, man. I got a call and somebody said His Excellency is waiting. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, man. And so I went down the elevator and went to like the villas, and it's like this palatial. It's like a little mansion inside the hotel resort area, beautiful. And it's just him. And there was this, a buddy of his, and we just talked for like 6 hours.
Dang.
Talked for like 6 hours, like, a couple days after Boachuk Ortiz. And he's given me just like his take on boxing, his take on the ring, what it was, what it is currently, what it should be. And I'm like, I agree with you. It could be better. Yeah, It could be better, like, hey, listen, it's me and my staff, we have all kind of ideas, but we didn't have the resources, He's like, I know that, but you will, And I'm like, really? Are you really going to get this? Because, prior to His Excellency, there were a number of people who wanted to buy the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them made really good offers and got pretty far into due diligence in the negotiation. And Oscar pulled it off the table 11th hour.
Yeah.
I was aware of 2 such occasions where it was like real close, where like, these people who, thought that they were going to buy the ring were already talking to me and like, okay, Doug, here's the plan. And here's your new role, And I remember
transition period.
Sure. Are you sure? Because when I met with you at the Golden Boy headquarters, Oscar wasn't there and Eric Gomez wasn't there. I'm like, no. They're well aware of everything. And I'm like, it's like, you got to understand this. It's like, you can't think of the ring as Golden Boys. It's Oscar De La Hoya's. It's the Golden Boys. Like, and he might get sentimental and be like, no, it's mine. And I get that totally. So I was like, you really think so? All right, we'll see. And he was saying like, it'll be a month or so. But it lasted longer than that, But we met. We talked for about 6 hours that day. They said, hey, can you stick around tomorrow? I'm like, it's a nice room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all expenses paid. Sure. Why not? And then I met with him again the afternoon of the next day. It was a long meeting or whatever. And then that evening, and we talked more and more and kind of like just talked about like a basic framework, a basic plan, and like, who would you need, to do your job, and I'm like, well, there's people who were part of my staff that left the ring.
Tom Gray?
Tom Gray went to the Sporting News, and the art director, the creative director, Lamar Clark, he was putting out some like a horse racing publication, it was a full-time gig with another company, so, I was like, well, I'll need to get those guys back. I got to get the band back together,
Mm-hmm.
Can't just be myself and Brian Hardy, the senior editor. And he's like, yeah, whatever, you'll do that. And I'll, you have my support, I'm like, okay, that's good. He's like, I want you to give me like a plan, like a what are those things called? The,
like an outline of like,
not an outline, but like a
rundown,
like a chart of everybody who's working underneath you. It's like,
organizational chart. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. Give me your organizational chart and give me your, and give me your estimates of like what it's all going to cost. I'm like, what? Like, that's a lot. Like, my degree is in journalism, not business. Like I never took one accounting class, Yeah. But I said, okay. And he's like, I'm going to be back here because Riyadh season is sponsoring this big UFC event at the Dome Globe, the Sphere. Thank you. The Sphere. It's like, I want you to present to me either the day before or the day after that, can you do that? I said, yeah, I can do that, And so I traveled back to Vegas, 3 weeks later, a month later, and presented, did all that. And he said, I like it, He said, are you going to be in London for Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua? And I'm like, absolutely not. That's a British fight, man. I don't care. And he's like, no. I want you to come out there. I'm going to fly you in. We're going to have some more meetings. We're going to talk more.
Man, he was serious, wasn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, it was like that. And then I was like, I packed for London for like 3 days. I thought they flew me in like that Thursday. And I'm like, okay, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm coming back on Sunday, right? And they're like, yeah. So I packed stuff for like 4 days tops, And I mean, everything like medication and like contact lenses, all that. And they're like, can you stay until Wednesday? And I'm like, yeah, all right. So, it's like these meetings, and they're like, some of them are like, they start in the evening and they end at like 3 or 4 in the morning or whatever. It's like that. And he's nonstop like that. And, obviously boxing is just one little piece of the stuff that he's overseeing, because he's the chairman of the GEA, right? The Entertainment
Authority.
Is that what it's called? GEA of Saudi Arabia, whatever.
Right.
So they're working with everybody. They're bringing everybody there, not just in sports, but in entertainment and so forth. So, it was fascinating, and very challenging, because it was during those meetings around the time of Dubois Joshua, where he's like, he doesn't own the magazine yet, but he's pretty sure he's going to own it. And he's like, I want a print magazine before the end of the year. And I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, I want a print magazine. I don't want it like the old magazine. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, and he picked it up and like, this is flimsy. How many pages is this? 80. I want at least 100 pages. I want like real quality paper. And like, oh, okay. All right. Like whatever, that costs money, but if you want to do it, you can do it. He's like, but I want this magazine ready by the time of the WBC convention in early December. And I wanted to, to preview Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury, the rematch. And I'm like, holy crap, we got to get started now then. If we're going to have it like printed and out there to people, not just to you, but to subscribers by early December, we got to start. I told them, I remember telling them, I got to start now. I got to start assigning people. I got to get my team together too. Like I can't just, it can't just be myself and Brian Hardy. But it kind of was, we got Tom Gray to interview Tyson Fury, and he did a great job, as we knew he would. But we didn't have him helping us out as like a managing editor. You know what I mean? So it was hard. And it was basically all of October. We were grinding on finishing this magazine, and the whole way it's like, it's an education for them, because I'm having to tell them, like, guess what? You got to pay the printer up front. You got to pay them for the paper and the printing and the binding and all that, the assembly of the magazine. They get paid up front. And this is what it's going to cost, because they got to order the paper, and it's got to happen right now, for the paper to get there on time. And, and then, when it comes to mailing it out to the subscribers, that's a cost. That comes at a cost, and if you're shipping something to Hamburg, Germany, or you're shipping a bunch of magazines to Riyadh, that comes at a cost, especially when the magazine weighs a pound. And that's how much this magazine with this magazine right here. So it's with the cover.
Yeah.
It's 96 pages, but including the cover, it's 100 pages. And this is what we call 100-pound paperweight, the cover and the interior. Do you have one of these, by the way, Danny?
I don't. Michael does, though.
Oh, Michael does? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, text me, email me your address, and I'll put it in the mail. I mean,
I appreciate it.
But there's a lot of good stuff in here. But it came with a poster as well, and it's polybagged together. So like with the poster and the poly bag, it's a little bit over a pound. So when you're sending 2,000 to Riyadh, you're talking about a giant, literally 1 ton crate, of these magazines, and all that. But it's whatever. There's a learning curve. It's still, the learning curve is still ongoing or whatever. But we got it done. I mean, I was kind of, even after we finished the magazine, I was working on all of this type of stuff through up until Thanksgiving, like right around that week. Making sure this magazine was getting mailed out to everybody, and I haven't heard a negative thing about it, man. It's like, and social media is a negative place, and there's folks that just they hate you because they want to hate you. It doesn't matter how good something is, or how good of a job you're doing. They want to shit on you, but so far it's like 100%. People are like, this magazine's something else,
Yeah.
I got a voicemail from Larry Merchant, who's on our comp list, and he was like, "Wow, you guys hit it out of the park." I'm like, "Oh, this is great."
That's all you need, right
that's
there.
all I need. Right, that's all I need. Okay, man, that's good. Yeah. So it feels good to be back in print. I'm rusty, like a fighter being out of the ring for a long time. That we were out of print for 2 years, so we're all a little rusty and all, but we're knocking the rust off. And we finished the January issue, so that'll be out like towards the end of next week, and we're already starting on the February issue, and we're already talking about special issues and kind of stuff now. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Did you because you mentioned how Marco from Golden Boy gave you a call and like, hey, you're still in Vegas, His Excellency wants to speak to you and all that. Between that first meeting with him and the the last meeting you had with him, even when you went to London and all that, did you have a chance or get a chance to talk to anybody from Golden Boy, specifically Oscar De La Hoya? Because you said that's his magazine.
Not Oscar, but I was in constant contact with Marco. Marco's my guy. His name is Marco Palaio, and he's like the CFO, but he's kind of in charge. You've met him, right? Have you met him?
Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah, good dude. A young executive, but also experienced because he's been with Golden Boy well over 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's learned a lot, and he's a smart. He's very reasonable, and it's always a blessing if the CFO of your company is an understanding person, because a lot of times they have to be cold, they got to just be about the numbers,
Yeah.
And Marco's a really warm dude. I was in contact with him for most of the time, and it's just, he was like, he told me, go in there, and just listen, just hear him out, and let me know what you think, and because he knows, like, it's, you never know if Oscar is going to sell or not. We've been down that road several times before, and Marco was probably aware of other instances that I wasn't even aware of. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we didn't know, if it was actually going to happen, but I did keep in contact with Golden Boy through Marco, which was good. And I intend to stay in contact with everybody at Golden Boy. I didn't get a chance to talk to Oscar in Riyadh during that big the relaunch party,
right?
The banquet that they had there, a couple of days before the heavyweight championship rematch. But I saw Marilyn Aceves, who's one of the Golden Boy executives and works very close with Oscar. And I let her know. I said, like, hey, I'm going to give a shout out to Oscar when I give my speech or whatever.
I saw that, yeah.
But you're part of that. Just know I'm talking about you as well. You and Marco is like, you guys are the unsung heroes, because there have been people that have been, and I don't even take it personally. They were just anti-ring. They weren't like anti-ring. They were anti the magazine being in print. You know what I mean? They didn't get it. They were like, get rid of that, there was always somebody there that was kind of looking out for me and would let me know, hey, this guy he's planning to cut the magazine off, and there's going to be a meeting. They're going to call you in and they're going to tell you about this. And I'm like, oh, what can I do? And Marilyn was great, because she organized, like, Oscar's schedules and stuff. She's like, I tell you what, I can arrange for Oscar and Eric Gomez to arrive half an hour early. You show up half an hour early, and you convince them, like, oh, okay, no pressure. But here's the crazy thing. There was no pressure. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, Oscar and Eric love boxing and they love the ring.
Right.
And like, I didn't need half an hour. I needed 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody comes into the conference room, and this dude's like, yeah, so sorry, Doug, about the ring. And then Oscar's like, oh, yeah, we're not doing that now. And his dude's like, oh, like, you son of a bitch, looking at me like, I'm after you now, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But
well, you mentioned that, after that first conversation in Vegas with Turki Alalshikh, that you felt like he shared a lot of your values in terms of how you thought about the ring and the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that, and obviously,
and I'll tell you what, like, so the first meeting, 6 hours, no exaggeration.
Yeah.
I'm just listening to him. He's kind of holding court, and we're talking, and he was asking questions too, just about like the U.S. boxing scene and this, and what are your thoughts on that? And then we had another meeting later that evening, like a late night. Oh, no, that one went to the late night. So, okay, by the end of the night, we're going like after midnight here. Because I sat down with him about like 6:30. Probably like from 11 to 12:30. We're just talking boxing. You know what I mean? Like, we're not even talking about the ring. We're not talking business or plans. We're just talking about boxing. You know what I mean? And he's speaking like a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
Which you can kind of tell. You know what I mean? Like, and here's the guys I think is great. Here are the fights I want to see. But it's different with him. Like, when you and I sit here and talk about the fights we want to see, we have no means for actually making it happen.
Yeah.
And like, when he's sitting there pontificating about these fights he wants to see, it's like, oh, this is probably going to happen,
Yeah.
Or there's a
the resources. Yeah.
It's different. Yeah. So I'm like, it was weird. I was thinking that, like, we're sitting here just like, just shooting the shit, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This shit is probably going to happen next year. It was weird. I was like, oh, wow. And it was weird. And being there with him too, the people who were calling in, trying to reach him, like, the movers and shakers in the boxing world, or the fighters. And one of them was Ryan Garcia called him up.
Yeah.
Called him from like, he was like in the Sierras or something. He was like out in nature or whatever, like among giant redwood trees, and he was, calling up to say, hey, I know I'm suspended. I'm going to come back, and I just want to let you know that I would love to fight on a Riyadh season card. Just want to let you know. It was interesting seeing, like, oh, okay. Everybody, like, especially
you were literally a fly on the wall for that.
Yeah. It was kind of amazing, and I was thinking to myself, nobody thinks I have this audience either. I ain't putting it out there, until this is a done deal. You know what I mean? And it's public knowledge that Alalshikh is the owner of Ring Magazine. But yeah, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting experience, and it remains to be. I'm traveling to London next week, as a matter of fact. So it's like,
okay.
I got to get used to that.
Yeah. I think you're going to be traveling a lot more.
Before we started the podcast, I was telling you about the long trip to Riyadh. By the way, that was my first time being in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Yeah.
And cool. Like, no culture shock whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and maybe it'd be different had I been hanging out in Jeddah or some other city in Saudi Arabia, but Riyadh is like, there's a lot of international business happening there. I don't want to say it's Western or Westernized. I'd say it's fairly Westernized. I'm like,
there's an influence.
I stayed at a JW Marriott, and all around me, I'm seeing like KFC and Starbucks, and and there's like the Arabic writing, that beautiful writing and all, but then everything's in English, and all the street signs, there's Arabic, and then there's English, and most people speak English, and at least at the Marriott, there's all kind of like European businessmen and stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Actually, at that hotel, there was also a bunch of influencers that Turkey had flown in for the relaunch. Yeah. I had no idea who they were. I knew they were influencers because they were in their 20s and they all had tattoos all over their necks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they were on their phones the whole time, like, yo, no, I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Well, that's their job, right? The content creators. Yeah.
Have you heard of the Nafati brothers?
I haven't. No.
They started some kind of fight league called the Freak Fight League or the Fight Freak League. they're these
sounds
little
like an adult website.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're these little dudes. Well, they had this concept of the two of them fighting some big guy in like a cage match. Google it, whatever. The Nafati brothers. I think it's Neffati or Nefatti, whatever. But they have to be like lightweights, right? They're in good shape, But and they fought like this power lifter, some like world record holder, and like a massive British dude. You know what I mean? Like those big beefy British guys with the beards and all, and they look like barbarians or whatever. And it's like these two little dudes just like teaming up and like attacking him or whatever. It's nuts, but whatever. I met them. I don't know why I just told you that story. It was amusing to me because like they were like I told them, I'm like, you guys are kind of like the new generation. Like you're Gen Z, definitely. And I don't get a lot of what you're into. But I saw them at that gala. I saw them in that big like event center, that big hall, looking at all those Ring magazines. They had like hundreds of Ring magazine covers framed and like posted everywhere, and like these like kind of like hologram displays of Ring magazine and like some of the interiors of vintage magazines and photos from the Ring archives, but mostly it was covers, and all of them going back to the 20s, and it's fascinating because you literally see the history of boxing. But it was interesting to me to see these kids in their 20s. I call them kids because I'm in my 50s. Right. Tatted up, and they're not dressed like formally, and they're dressed in weird stuff and all. But they're looking at these Ring magazines from the 50s and 60s, and they're looking at fighters that they don't know who these. I mean, everybody knows Rocky Marciano and Ali, and Mike Tyson, right? Everybody knows those guys, but they're looking at these fighters that were great fighters. They're in the Hall of Fame. They were champions, like Jimmy Carter, whatever, Ike Williams and Bob Foster and these whatever, like great lightweights from the 1940s that nobody talks about anymore,
right?
Or 40s and 50s. And there was like, I could see a fascination, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I could see guys like this getting bit by the bug, and like they're saying, well, who is there? How come I don't know who this guy is? Why was this guy a big enough deal to be on Ring magazine's cover? Mm-hmm. And then, okay, how do they learn about this guy? Well, they can go to Google and all, but in the past, you learned about those guys by reading Ring magazine. What I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Okay. And I told them that, they were at the Marriott, and I'm at breakfast, and they came by and said, hey, we really liked your speech and all that. Yes. And, I got up and shook their hands and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, hopefully, like, not necessarily them, but maybe them, but like, the people that they influence, they're influencers, right? Like, they check out the magazine, like an actual magazine, like people who didn't grow up reading print anything. They didn't grow up reading newspapers. They didn't grow up reading magazines, right? They don't read books. Like literally this generation that I'm talking about, Gen Z or Generation Alpha, they get their information electronically and often like visually, like mediums like this, like YouTube video or from a podcast or other means. They're not reading hard copy. They're reading a little bit, but it's not a magazine. And I'm like, it's kind of cool that there's a magazine in 2025. And if they're curious about boxing, they can find it. They can pick it up and actually learn, not just about what's happening today, but what happened in back in history.
Now, what I wanted to touch on, because you going back to when you had your conversations with Marco of Golden Boy about your reaction to His Excellency's conversations and stuff. You said you were in contact with him because of Oscar De La Hoya. You said that there was a couple times since he owned it where he pulled out at the 11th hour. You know, obviously he's very passionate. He was very passionate about the ownership. Do you think that if you had any concerns that you relayed to Marco of Golden Boy that got back to Oscar De La Hoya in terms of your conversations with him, do you think?
I didn't really have any concerns. You know, I was kind of on the same wavelength as his.
Right.
So,
which is I'm sure it got back to Oscar, but do you think that if you did, maybe Oscar would have, you know what, is this worth it?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Because I mean, you're the guy if anybody wants to ask about the magazine or
that's very possible. Yeah. I hadn't even really thought about that, but yeah, if I had like, red flag, you know, like.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
So I mean, if you kind of want to, you're the one that made the sale happen. You're the guy.
No, I think the sale happened because His Excellency wanted it, and he made Oscar an offer he couldn't refuse. And you know, I think Golden Boy, just like Top Rank and Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, and they're doing good business with them. I mean, like Riyadh season is sponsoring even beyond Riyadh season. Like Riyadh season is like October to March, right? It's, you know, and where they want to have the biggest events, sports and entertainment in the world hosted in Riyadh. But outside of Riyadh, they're sponsoring Golden Boy Promotions and Top Rank cards.
Right.
You know, they're kind of stepping in there like, you know, the way Corona and Tecate used to be, or back in the day, Budweiser beer, you know what I mean? Like that sponsor that's going to, you know, help these promoters pay everybody, you know what I mean? And make a profit or whatever, you know, they're bringing in that sponsorship. So it's, you know, it's in Oscar's and Bob and Frank and Eddie's best interest to, you know, work with Turki Alalshikh, you know what I mean? And you know, basically, I'll just put it out there, stay in his good graces, you know what I mean? So, you know, if he wants to own the ring, you know, so be it, you know. And I think Oscar spoke about this, you know, during his turn at the podium at the relaunch celebration, is that, you know, he knows it's in good hands. Mm-hmm. You know, he knows the guy who bought it shares his vision and you know, has the means to really kind of make a lot of stuff happen, you know.
Right.
So you guys can like fans can look forward to like a super comprehensive one-stop shop website, you know, when the new website goes live, you know.
Do we have an ETA for that?
Probably by the end of next week.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Knock on wood.
Yeah. Definitely by the end of the month, right?
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Definitely by the end of the month. No, I'm yeah.
I mean, what do you think is the most?
Go ahead, man.
What do you think is the most anticipated? I guess if you want to call it change or something that Turkey wants or asked for and said, oh, you know, I want to do it like this. That, you know, people might be excited. Obviously, they're excited about the print coming back. That's a big deal.
That's the print.
Would you say it's that?
Back. There's that. There's a bunch of things that they're going to put into play. I don't know how much I'm at liberty to speak about. I mean, I think they've put some stuff out there, like next week, next Saturday. Is it next Saturday? Next Saturday, January 11th. Like the Ring Magazine Awards, it's going to be like an actual awards show. You know what I mean? Like the Academy Awards, you know?
Yeah.
Like he thinks big like that, you know? And he's starting right away. Like we had talked about this, and I thought he was talking about like for next year, for the 2025 awards, not the 2024. I'm like, really? Do we have time to You're doing it, man? You know what I mean? So there's stuff like that, but he's talking about, and I think I can speak a little bit about this. He's talking about doing, most of the Riyadh season shows are massive. They're huge. It's like undisputed championships, undisputed heavyweight and light heavyweight championships, right? With stacked undercards, like this February 22nd card. It's crazy, right? You get the rematch between Beterbiev and Bivol, and literally every undercard bout could be a main event. And they're all 50-50 fights with the exception of Shakur Stevenson versus Floyd Schofield. But even that's still kind of interesting, right? Like
that's intriguing. Yeah.
Still kind of intriguing. It's like Schofield really thinks he can do this. All right.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking like he's rough and tumble. So like he might have some success. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like sometimes those awkward Sean Porter type physical dudes throw off pure boxers, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, they're all like intriguing matchups, if not 50-50. Like those are all big cards, but he's talking about doing some like not so big, not like eight bouts, right? Like he's talking about doing like some cards that are just 3 or 4 bouts, no more than a 3-hour broadcast, but good fighters, like world rated fighters. And he's talking about like, you have to be a Ring Magazine subscriber, you know what I mean? To like watch these things, right? Otherwise maybe you got to pay it. Like it's like some kind of whatever. I don't know. They haven't figured all that out, but he's talking about stuff like that and doing fights in like exotic locations. You know what I mean? Like whatever, London's Bridge, Alcatraz, Times Square, you know what I mean? Melrose Place, you know, like just like, stuff like I think, and that's different, you know what I mean? And I think fans will be into it. I also think that there's going to be a contingent, a group, a percentage of hardcore fandom that just they're not going to like anything he does. They're just like, I don't like him. I don't like what he represents. I don't like Saudi Arabia involvement. Excuse me. Yeah. Thank you. They're just going to be downers, right? They're going to be like, I don't like any of this. It doesn't matter what they do, you know. Yeah. They're like, well, I don't like fights. I don't like these big fights going to Riyadh, you know. And but if they do big fights in the U.S., they're still going to be like, well, I still don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, and honestly, I don't get the whole Riyadh. I mean, I would get it if you're an American fan, right? And there's a fight between 2 American fighters that you've always wanted to see. Like you've wanted them to fight and you wanted to see that and you wanted to be there for it, right? And that matchup goes to Riyadh. That I get you being like pissy about. Mm-hmm. But Usyk Fury or Beterbiev Bivol, like those those fights weren't going to happen in America.
They weren't, no.
I mean, come on. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't like Fury Usyk could only happen in Riyadh with what the money that they wanted and their representatives wanted. It could only happen under the auspices of Riyadh season, right? And if it didn't happen in Riyadh, the only place it would have made economical sense would be the UK, would be England. It would be like Wembley Stadium. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Beterbiev Bivol, it's like those guys don't have fans in America. You know, like we as hardcore fans, we know who they are. We know that they're the best light heavyweights. We know that when they share the ring, it's going to be hotly contested and it's going to be intriguing and fascinating and entertaining for us. But that's not a big fight in the United States. And I don't even know if that fight would have made economical sense in Quebec, in Montreal, you know, the adopted home of Artur Beterbiev, with what everybody wanted to get paid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it could have been a big event. Montreal is a great fight town. So is Quebec City. It's a great sports town. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying they wouldn't have had a lot of people in whatever arena they chose, but for what these fighters and everybody else wants to get paid, they're not happening outside of Riyadh season. Yeah. You know? So it's like, watch it on DAZN and enjoy it. Enjoy. If you're here on the West Coast, enjoy watching an afternoon fight, and then enjoy the rest of your day. I don't know. I don't get it, but whatever. I know there's going to be that group of fight fans that are just going to be sour on everything Riyadh season related. And it should be noted that Ring Magazine is not attached to Riyadh season. That it's It's Turki Alalshikh. He bought it with his own money. It's his, But whatever.
That's actually a very important distinction.
On him. Yeah, it is.
Right.
It's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to ask you about
Ring
that.
Magazine is not government funded.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously
we're not.
There's people who are still going to say like, oh, well, even though people say that, or even if it is his money, it's still, I get
that. I get that. And I even appreciate people, who are skeptical or are, they're leery. They're thinking like, well, is the Ring Magazine going to become a Turki Alalshikh mouthpiece? Is it suddenly going to, whatever he wants, is that going to be reflected in the pages of the magazine, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say, I appreciate that concern, because that means you're concerned about real journalism, and that was a concern with Oscar De La Hoya when it was owned by Golden Boy Promotions, and we had to deal occasionally, as I told you, as I talked about at the start of this podcast, occasionally we had to deal with the company, the owners, leaning on us, but not often, and I know nobody's going to believe this, but this is the truth. Hand to the Bible or the Quran, or whatever. Oscar De La Hoya has never not me, has never reached out to me via phone, text message, DM, whatever, and said, I want you to do this. I don't want this person on the cover. I want this person on the cover. I want this person as fight of the year, or I want my fighters to be ranked a certain way, or whatever. I've never had that. He never expressed his opinion. He never leaned on us, and I know folks aren't going to believe that, but whatever, that's your problem. But I know it was also, that's something that people were concerned about. And honestly, I appreciate that. But I think it's different with Turki Alalshikh because he's not a promoter. He's like, I look at him as like what HBO was in the 90s and the 2000s. He represents an entity that cuts the biggest check in the sport, right? That's what HBO was. They had the biggest budget for boxing, and they worked with all the promoters, which is what Alalshikh does. You look at these cards, you look at the LA show, and you look at who's on the show, and you look at this upcoming card on February 22nd, and he works with everybody. And in fact, it's beyond that. He doesn't just work with everybody. He gets them to work with each other, like he did with Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn. Mm-hmm. Like he's going to be doing with Oscar De La Hoya and Eddie Hearn. He's kind of like, you guys can be rivals, you can't be haters of each other. And that was what HBO was. HBO, all these promoters, especially the big guys, the big guns like Bob Arum and Don King, hated each other.
Yeah, they
were fierce rivals, but when it made sense, they would come together and they would work together. And without HBO, I'm telling you right now, Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad doesn't happen.
Right.
That's HBO making that happen. And it's the same thing with other co-promotions. It happened because HBO, they had the checkbook. They had the biggest checkbook. And that's what I kind of see His Excellency in Riyadh season for this generation. Now he's like the new HBO, kind of operating through DAZN,
bouncing off of that, since we're on that similar topic, what do you think is the current the state of health for boxing? You got cable essentially going away. All these streaming sites have become essentially Netflix is the place to go. For
I think there's growing pains. I don't think it's healthy. I'm speaking for America. I'm not speaking for the world because I think the Japanese boxing scene is healthy. I think they have the talent, they have the champions, they have fighters that are willing to fight the best in their divisions and fight each other. And they have the fans, and they have the media support and the networks out there, which are, cable and even terrestrial but also streaming, right? They've got it all out there. They're healthy. I would say the UK fight scene is healthy. Like I was in London in September. What was that? September 21st. I was there, and that's a bucket list thing, by the way, to be at one of those big fights in England that are like a stadium fight.
Yeah, Wembley or something. Yeah.
To experience a fight with 90,000 others. Well, that doesn't really happen out here, does it? Occasionally we can get like a Canelo Alvarez stadium fight. I think the last time was when Alvarez fought Billy Joe Sanders, right? Saunders in Dallas, in Jerry's World. Maybe that was 70,000. Not too shabby. But honestly, beyond Canelo, we don't have stadium fighters here. We don't have stadium fighters, and we don't have stadium fight matchups. So I'm speaking for the U.S. boxing scene. I don't think it's healthy. I think we've got talent. I think there's potential, but I don't think the elite American fighters who are currently in their prime, I don't think they fight often enough, and I don't think they're fighting each other enough. And it's as simple as that. And there's no interest. You're not going to have interest unless the best are fighting each other and making not just big events, but great fights. That's what we had in the 80s, and people were saying like, well, boxing's going to die when Muhammad Ali retires because he's bigger than the sport. No, I heard this. I read this. I heard this and I read this. And I idolized Muhammad Ali, check it out. But I also was, let's say I was a Sugar Ray Leonard enthusiast, and he was my true on-ramp into the sport of boxing. I learned about the divisions, and I learned about other fighters out there, because of his rivals like Roberto Duran and Thomas Hearns. And the boxing did not die after Ali because you had Sugar Ray Leonard and you had Tommy Hearns and you had Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler. And they were willing to fight each other, and they were also willing to fight the top contenders within whatever divisions that they were campaigning in.
Right.
They just fight each other. That's, it's great. The Four Kings had 9 fights between each other. That's awesome. But the fact of the matter is they were fighting other guys too. And that's important, and I don't think we really have that. And I think we had that. I know we had that in the 90s. We had that, it was great that Oscar De La Hoya was the face of boxing, and he was willing to fight. Once he went up to welterweight, he was willing to roll the dice against an Ike Corte and a Felix Trinidad, and a Shane Mosley coming up in weight. And then Fernando Vargas at a heavier weight, at a junior middleweight. That's great that we had that, and that we had those fighters fighting everybody else.
Yeah.
You had Fernando Vargas fighting Ike Corte and Obakar. Yeah. Ike Corte fighting Obakar and Oscar fighting Obakar and Obakar fighting Felix Trinidad. And, these guys were fighting each other and making for intriguing fights, and it's less so. And then like with featherweight, you had that with Manny Pacquiao and Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales and Juan Manuel Marquez. And I'm pretty sure it was Barrera and Morales kicking that off in February of 2000. You had that.
Yeah.
And the great thing, here's the brilliant thing about that. When Barrera fought Morales, and I know this because I was covering him and I was there the whole way. And I wanted to see that fight at least a year before it happened, probably 2 years before it happened. And it was viewed as a Mexican fight, a Mexican fan fight or a hardcore fan fight. And that's exactly what it was. It took place at the Mandalay Bay Event Center, and the event center was cut in half. They drew a big black curtain across half the arena because there was only 6,000 people there. Not bad, 6,000. It was everybody there was Mexican, except for me and Steve Kim. And but the great thing is there was a network that broadcasted Boxing After Dark, HBO's Boxing After Dark. And it was a great fight, an all-time great fight. And other fans, not so hardcore fans and non-Mexican fight fans took notice. And when they fought again, whatever, a year and a half later, they're fighting on pay-per-view, and they're fighting in MGM's Grand Garden Arena. They're fighting in a big arena, not arena cut in half,
Yeah.
So you had that. You had these dudes that were just, and it's not just that they agreed to fight each other and share the ring. It was when they did share the ring, they got down. And so we had that with, Marquez and Pacquiao. Those fights were awesome. All 4 fights were like just dramatic, thrilling fights. Maybe the third fight, not that great, but first 2 fights and that 4th fight were just they were like fight of the year,
Right.
And I'll say that. And here's a technical fight: Marquez, when he challenged Barrera for the WBC junior lightweight title, that's as good as it gets. That fight to me is every bit as good as like that first fight between Mike McCallum and James Toney, 2 master technicians who also come to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember covering that and feeling like the rounds were going by like they seemed like a minute long each round. I was like, oh my God, like the fight's over already.
Yeah.
That's how much I was enjoying it as I'm covering it and writing about it on my laptop, writing on Deadline for Max Boxing. So we had that, and we don't really have that as much as we used to have. We're not getting that as much as we used to have. And it needs to, we can't just rely on the Mexican fighters to fight each other. And we can't just rely on the Eastern European and, Central Asian fighters, from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and Ukraine and Russia and all. Like they can't just be the guys willing to fight everybody. You know what I mean? It's the American fighters have to fight each other. They got to get over it, whatever it is. And I know they all liken themselves to businessmen and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine. Be about your money, but also be about your legacy, be about the sport. And we're not seeing that as much as we should. And hopefully that changes. Hopefully with the help of Riyadh season, there's enough money coming their way to it's like, all right, you know what, this is it's worth it. I'm getting paid for this risk, because they're all thinking about that. They've all got that late career Floyd Mayweather mindset, which I can't stand, because they're in their 20s. And Mayweather wasn't like that in his 20s. And no matter how many times we tell them that, they're like, nope, I'm about my business. And I'm retired, by the way. And I'm back, but I'm not fighting that guy. Or I don't know. It could be healthier. That's I'll just leave it at that. I do think that there's still time. I wanted to see Teofimo Lopez fight the likes of Shakur Stevenson and Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney when they were all lightweights. I knew, by the way, I knew we weren't going to get it. I knew it wasn't going to happen. But it's not too late. They're still in their 20s. They're still in their athletic prime. These fights can still happen at 140 pounds and 147. And I know Stevenson is at lightweight right now, but he could fight at 140. I believe that.
Right.
So it could still happen, and I'm hopeful that it will happen. And we'll see what happens in 2025.
I wanted to get your take on the the $50 million class action lawsuit that was filed against Netflix recently. There might be some listeners right now like, oh, why are you guys talking about this? This isn't
That's
real.
kind of funny to me because it wasn't a pay-per-view, It's
right.
Just,
exactly. But we were talking about before we started recording here that
how many of those people, how many people who are part of that class action did they order Netflix just to see that fight?
Yeah, I mean, that's the number that you want to know about.
It's I'm sorry, it's not cable. We're talking about streaming. We're not talking about terrestrial television. Back in the day, there would be these like high profile fights on network television. And there was no such thing as buffering. You know what I mean? Like millions of people are tuning in to see Muhammad Ali regain the heavyweight title against Leon Spinks, right? On like, I don't remember what network it was, ABC or whatever, or they're watching him fight, Ernie Shavers, which is the first live fight that I watched with interest, no such thing as it could be. Doesn't matter how many millions are watching that, it's different, but we know that about streaming technologies, that the more people join in, the more, the bandwidth, that's what it's called. The bandwidth problems, we have that or whatever. But I get the frustration because I didn't have to deal with it as much as others, but I know a lot of people had to deal with that. I was dealing with was like it was a delay. Like I'm watching the Barrios fight. Who did Barrios fight again? The Garcia? No, wait.
No.
Barrios fight. Tough cat. Jesus.
Ramos?
Sorry.
Ramos.
Yeah. I'm getting
it.
Yeah. I'm watching that fight, and then I'm also looking at my X account, and people are like, "This is bloody. This is getting crazy," and I'm like, "It's not. What are they talking about?" I'm like, "Oh crap! They're 3 rounds ahead of me."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that sucked, and then I'm afraid to like log out and log back in because then I'm afraid it's gonna start buffering or whatever because it wasn't buffering at all. I'm like, well, I'm on a delay, but I'm not experiencing this buffering that I'm seeing everybody else complain about on social media.
Right.
But I did finally have to like get out and get back in. And that was a problem during the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano rematch. But amazingly, not so much during the main event, which is funny because I didn't care about the main event. I was just like, that was just fine. It's just like, But I get the frustration. But this is something that it's a part of streaming media, and they're gonna, Netflix is gonna have to learn from this experience. I mean, they have to be pleased with the amount of people that were tuning in at the same time. But they're gonna, if they're gonna do this again, if they're gonna do something like this again, they're gonna have to be ready. They're gonna have to have the bandwidth. I don't know what that entails. You know what I mean? But you asked me what I think about it. Sadly, I find it kind of amusing.
I mean, it's also like, it like we talked about, Netflix is like the cream of the crop right now.
I want Netflix to be involved in boxing. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a win. I know a lot of people were shitting on it, and they were, they're caught up in their feelings because of Mike Tyson. But Mike Tyson made his choice. He's a grown ass man. He made his choice. I'm not gonna be that sad about it. I didn't want to see him get hurt, and I was happy he didn't get hurt. So I was like, this is a win, because a lot of people saw Taylor Serrano too. And a lot of people saw Barrios Ramos. And I know so because I was in touch with people I went to grade school with. And then I have not been in touch with since like junior high or high school that are asking me about, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. But they tuned in and they were watching and they were text messaging me saying, man, I love this fight. I'm like, So that's a win. I take that as a win, and I hope they get involved in boxing. We were talking about the health of the sport in America, and I think that would help because I think Netflix is the closest thing to those networks, like what ABC was in the 70s and 80s, what NBC and CBS was in those previous decades. I think Netflix is now.
Right.
As many homes as it's in, and not just homes, but hotels and stuff like that. I think that can help with the health of the sport. But I also think the fact that it was Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson that got Netflix involved, and the fact that it's not even arguable, that was the biggest boxing event in the United States.
Right.
Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Wrap your head around that. That was the biggest boxing event in America for 2024. Yeah. It really was. And that's a sign okay, why is that? Why is there nobody else? Why aren't there any real fighters that American fighters that can share the ring, that will capture the public's imagination like that?
Right.
It's not there.
Yeah. Right.
There. So that speaks to where the sport is in America. Again, America. It's healthier in other places.
Right. Well, it is the beginning of a new year, so hopefully.
And I'm hopeful. Yeah. No, I'm a glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah. Not a glass half empty.
Listen, it's starting off right.
Yeah.
February 1st, we get David Benavidez against David Morrell. That's a great light heavyweight matchup. Two legitimate contenders, two guys in the prime. I think it's a 50-50 matchup. That's what we need. And I like that rematch on the undercard, Stephen Fulton.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon Figueroa. That's going to be fun.
That's a fun fight. That's a fun fight. Yeah.
It really is. So I'm like, hey, I'm all in with those two fights. And February 22, that's like those Darn King pay-per-views, man. Yeah. Revenge, the rematches, Star Spangled Glory, those Julio Cesar Chavez headline cards that featured Felix Trinidad and Julian Jackson, you know what I mean? Like, and Finito Lopez, like that, or Azuma Nelson, yeah. Like that's a card. And I'm into every one of those matchups on that card. So we're starting off right. So let's see. Hopefully that just creates momentum, because good fights create more quality fights. Right. Quality matchups create future quality matchups. These guys got to fight each other. They got to mix it up for things to happen, for the boxing scene to globally to heat up.
And there's going to be more print issues. Is there going to be more that are going to come into, I guess, be printed and distributed for this year of the Ring magazine?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's monthly. Yeah, every month of 2025. Maybe an extra, maybe a special issue tossed in there as well.
So you're busy.
They'll all be like real high quality. And they'll all have something like packaged with it. If it's not like this, if it's not like a collector's item poster, this artist was Butcher Billy. I thought he did a good job.
That's good. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. There'll be a poster with the January issue. We'll have comic books attached to it. We'll have trading cards. We'll have a lot of stuff. Yeah, I'm serious. Yeah, it'll be every issue will be a collector's issue.
It's great.
Like every issue that it'll be, you'll see it on eBay for like $500 in like 6 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you definitely you want to look out for them. You want to buy them, and we'll get them back. On sale at newsstands and Barnes and Noble, Walmart, wherever you can find magazines these days.
Yeah.
It's a shrinking market. We know that, but
yeah,
those places where you can get magazines, in the airports,
yeah,
the Hudson shops in all the airports in America. We want to do that. That's not going to happen right away. That whole distribution plan, that's going to be month by month. That's got to grow organically.
Right.
Just like growing the subscriber base. It's got to happen month by month.
Right.
But we will.
Well, we will. We will. Absolutely. Well, Doug, obviously we always appreciate you coming on here on the Last Round Boxing Podcast. Hopefully it doesn't take another 2 years or more for you to return and we can.
Well, I talk so much and these are so long. It's like, they're kind of like, they last, but no. Have me back as soon as possible, anytime, seriously.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, now that you guys are obviously, new ownership and now you're coming out monthly with these magazines, your team's busy. So there's a lot more to talk about in terms of the Ring magazine and all that stuff.
There will be a lot to talk about for sure.
Awesome. And then people can follow you at Dougie Fischer on X.
Fischer on X and Instagram.
And Instagram. Are you still not blocking people like you've mentioned in the past?
I don't block anybody. I'm not even muting people. I was doing that for a while, muting them. And I'm like, I don't have to do any of that, man. No clapback Thursdays from Doug Fischer. Sorry.
At least not yet.
Not yet. No, I'm not going to do it, man. I'm not doing it. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood for 2025.
That's good. Well, Happy New Year to you and your family and everybody at the Ring magazine, all your staff, Dougie. Michael sends his regards. I'm sure he'll be on the next show when you come on. Obviously, he apologizes he couldn't make it, but he'll be on.
Yeah, we'll catch up for sure.
Yeah, we'll catch up in the future. So for our guest of the week and the editor-in-chief of the Ring magazine, Dougie Fischer, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.